This story is titled, My Wife Said to Her Family. He's incompetent as a man. So I proved she's irrelevant as a wife. And now she is begging, saying she is sorry, but I am done. I 35 male used to think guys who posted relationship drama on Reddit were just weak dudes who couldn't handle their shit. Funny how life humbles you. 7 years of marriage, 10 years together with my wife Vanessa, 33 female, and I'm about to join the ranks of men I once silently judged. We met at a college party my senior year. Me, the hockey team's alternate captain with NHL dreams that eventually crashed after a knee injury. Her, this gorgeous marketing major who somehow chose me out of all the guys there. Fast forward a decade, and I'm a district manager at a construction equipment company. Not exactly the life I imagined, but it paid for our nice suburban house, her luxury SUV, and the vacations she picked out every year. No kids in the picture. She was always not ready yet, just us and our Rottweiler, Diesel, who's probably the only one in the house who still looks at me with any respect. Let me put you in the picture of the nature of our relationship. I busted my ass to impress her early on, worked overtime to afford nice dates, bought a better car, got a personal trainer to stay in shape, all that shit. It felt worth it because she made me feel like I was the effing man. We'd spend weekends hiking, watching sports, trying new restaurants, whatever. I seriously thought I'd won the lottery with her. We moved in together after a year, and that's when things started changing, but real subtle like. She'd make these little comments about my apartment furniture being college level, so I let her decorate our new place. She'd wrinkle her nose when I cooked my go-to meals, so I let her take over the kitchen. She thought my hockey league took up too much time, so I cut back to make her happy. Little by little, I kept giving ground. On paper, we were killing it. Nice suburban house, 2 decent cars, vacations twice a year, always to places she picked. I got promoted a couple times. She worked her way up at her marketing firm. We were that couple everyone thought had their shit together. That Friday at my in-laws' place was supposed to be just another dinner. Frank, 67 male, my father-in-law, is actually cool as hell. A retired firefighter, taught me how to smoke brisket properly. We'd usually chill and talk sports while Vanessa hung with her mom. But Eleanor, 64 female, total nightmare, thinks her shit doesn't stink and judges everything from how you hold your fork to how you breathe. Looking back, I should have seen how Eleanor treated her father as a preview of my own future. She'd constantly correct him, roll her eyes when he told stories, and make these jokes about how helpless he was. And the poor bastard just took it with this sad little smile. Dinner that night seemed normal enough. Eleanor made some fancy salmon dish she wouldn't shut up about. Frank suggested we watch the game after dinner, but Eleanor shot that down with one of her death glares. So instead, we were all in the living room making small talk about people I didn't know or care about. Then Eleanor and her mom went to the kitchen doing whatever. I had stepped out to grab something from the kitchen when I heard them around the corner. They thought I was still watching the game with Frank in the den. He's so incompetent, Mom. I swear I have to tell him how to do literally everything. Eleanor's laugh cut through me like a knife. Well, at least he's consistent. Some men can't even manage that. Right? Yesterday he tried to hang a picture frame and put 3 holes in the wall before getting it right. 3. I could have done it in one try with my eyes closed. At least he has a decent job, Eleanor said, with that condescending tone that made my blood freeze. Your father wasn't exactly the sharpest tool either, but he provided. That's what matters in the long run. Yeah, I guess. But it's exhausting having to manage every little thing. The other day, I had to explain to him how to use the new coffee maker. Like it's rocket science or something. I stood there, completely frozen. Their laughter echoed in my ears as I felt something inside me crack. Have you tried just telling him to learn more? Eleanor asked, though her tone made it clear she already knew the answer. God number. You know how fragile men are. He'd probably mope for weeks. Easier to just do it myself or explain it like I'm talking to a 5-year-old. The thing is, that frame had uneven mounting brackets. Anyone would have struggled with it. And that new coffee maker had like 20 buttons and a manual written by someone who clearly didn't speak English as their first language. But none of that mattered to her. In her eyes, I was just an idiot who couldn't do basic shit. I should have stormed in, should have called her out right then. But something held me back. This wasn't about starting an argument. This was a moment of clarity, the kind that changes everything. So I just listened, my chest feeling like someone had replaced my heart with a block of ice. Men are like outdated appliances, honey, Eleanor continued with a chuckle. If they're not working right, you just throw money at the problem until it goes away. Keep him in his little routine, pay for someone else to fix his mistakes, and he'll never question a thing. Another round of chuckles. Another wave of disgust washing over me. True. And he is good for some things. He handles the yard without complaining, and his promotion last year was nice. The money's good. See? Focus on the positives. No marriage is perfect. I backed away silently, locked myself in the bathroom, and stared at my reflection. 10 years with this woman, 7 years of marriage. And this is what she really thought of me. Not just that I was incompetent, but the casual way she dismissed me as a person. Like I was some trained dog she had to manage. I thought about all the things I'd done for her over the years. The countless times I'd rearranged my schedule for her. The promotion I'd worked 60-hour weeks to get because she wanted to renovate the kitchen. The way I'd given up hobbies I loved because she thought they were a waste of time. The friends I'd stopped hanging out with because she found them immature. And what had she given up for me? Nothing I could think of. Not one effing thing. The truth hit me like a freight train. The woman I'd built my life around thought I was a fucking joke, and her mother was teaching her how to manage me rather than respect me. I splashed cold water on my face and made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not tonight. Tonight, I would watch. Closely. And see my marriage for what it truly was. That moment in the bathroom was like being unplugged from the Matrix. I suddenly saw everything clearly. Not just her, but myself too. What I'd become. How I'd slowly erased myself trying to make her happy. And for what? To be mocked behind my back? To be treated like a child? Nah, that shit was over. I went back to the living room with this fake-ass smile plastered on my face. No one even noticed anything was different. My wife and her mom came back a few minutes later, laughing about some other bullshit. I sat there nursing my beer, really looking at Vanessa, like actually seeing her for the first time in years. She was hot. That hadn't changed. Long blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of body that turned heads at the gym. But as I watched her laugh with her mother, I saw what I'd been blind to before. This coldness in her eyes, this calculating quality to her smile, the way she'd glance at me occasionally to make sure I was still where she expected me to be, like checking on a piece of furniture. I started noticing little things I'd somehow missed all these years. How she'd never actually laugh at my jokes, just give this tight little smile. How she'd subtly redirect conversations when I was talking to her friends. How she'd casually touch my arm when she wanted me to shut up. It was like watching a movie where the villain's identity is revealed, and suddenly all their previous actions make sense. The drive home was quiet. She scrolled through Instagram, occasionally showing me photos of people I didn't know or care about. I made the right noises while my mind raced a million miles an hour. Earth to husband, she said, nudging me. You're quiet tonight. Just tired, I replied. Long week. She accepted this without question and went back to her phone. She didn't care enough to dig deeper. Why would she? In her mind, I was just the predictable husband who would never question anything. It's crazy how obvious shit becomes once you're actually looking for it. Like how she didn't ask a single follow-up question about my day, my work, nothing. Just went right back to scrolling. When was the last time she'd actually been interested in my life? My thoughts? My anything? At home, I let Diesel out while she went upstairs. Our nightly routine, as predictable as the sunrise. In the backyard darkness, watching my dog happily chase shadows, a question hit me hard. When the heck did I become this guy? In college, I was alternate captain on the hockey team. I had confidence, options, respect. I was the guy who pushed himself in the gym, who led training when others wanted to quit. I wasn't some Instagram fitness model, but I was solid. Broad shoulders, strong arms. More importantly, I had fire in my eyes. Purpose. Self-respect. Now, I was still in decent shape, but something had changed. Not just physically, but in how I carried myself. I'd started slouching, started avoiding eye contact, started saying sorry for things that wasn't even my fault. I thought about how I used to be the life of the party, how I'd had goals, ambitions, a whole future planned out. I'd wanted to start my own business someday, maybe in sports equipment or training. I'd talked about it all the time in the early days. When was the last time I'd even thought about that dream? I couldn't remember. Somewhere along the line, I'd replaced my goals with hers, my dreams with hers, my life with hers. I lost myself along the way of making her happy. And what did I get in return? Contempt. Mockery. The casual cruelty I'd heard tonight. My mind raced through all the small moments that suddenly made sense. The way she'd roll her eyes when I spoke. The snide jokes at my expense around friends. The constant dismissal of my opinions on everything from what movie to watch to what car to buy. There was the time I wanted to go on a hunting trip with my buddies, and she made such a big deal about how selfish I was being that I canceled. The time I got excited about a potential job in another state with a huge promotion, and she shut it down without even a discussion. The way she controlled our social calendar, the restaurants we ate at, The people we hung out with. I remembered when my college buddy got married in Colorado 3 years ago. I was supposed to be a groomsman. Vanessa had accidentally booked us a non-refundable vacation to Cancun the same weekend. I'd missed one of my best friend's weddings, and our friendship had never been the same. Then there was the time my brother needed a place to crash after his divorce. I'd offered our guest room, and Vanessa had flipped out, said it would disrupt our routine. My own brother had to stay in a shitty motel instead of with family. I'd brushed it all off as normal marriage stuff. Happy wife, happy life, and all that bullshit the guys at work would say. But now I realized I'd been played. I'd slowly given up everything that made me who I was, piece by piece, until I was just this shell of a man, living someone else's idea of my life. I went back inside and found her already in bed, scrolling through her phone like she did every night. Do you see me as a capable man? The words came out before I could stop them, my voice low but steady. She glanced up from her phone, her eyes narrowing in confusion. Not guilt, not concern, just genuine bewilderment, like I'd asked if the sky was green. What? Of course I do. What kind of question is that? She said it so easily, so dismissively, like the answer was obvious, and I was ridiculous for even asking. There was no conviction in her voice, no weight behind the words. It was automatic, dismissive, like she was checking a box on a form. Why would you even ask that? She added, already looking back at her phone. Just wondering, I said quietly. She made a small humming noise, already absorbed in whatever was on her screen, the conversation already forgotten. I stood there for another moment, watching her, before heading to the shower. I knew for sure that things would change. I didn't know what that meant for our marriage yet, but I knew what it meant for me. I was going to find the man I used to be. As I lay there, I made a list in my head. All the things I'd given up, all the parts of myself I'd buried, all the boundaries I'd let her cross. And I promised myself I'd reclaim them, one by one. The first thing I'd do is hit the gym tomorrow morning, early, before she was even awake. I used to love those early morning workouts. The empty gym, the focus, the way it set me up for the day. Vanessa had complained about me waking her up when I got out of bed at 5 a.m., so eventually I'd stopped going. You know that enthusiasm that hits you at 3 a.m. and then you wake up next day and not do anything? Yeah, that was me, except I did everything I planned for. I woke up at 4:45 a.m. the next morning and didn't hit snooze. For once, I just got the F up. First real decision I'd made for myself in years. I grabbed my dusty gym clothes and slipped out of the bedroom. Vanessa didn't even stir, probably because she didn't actually give a shit what I was doing as long as it didn't inconvenience her. The gym was practically empty that early. Just a few serious lifters and some cardio people. I hit the weights hard. Too hard, probably. My form was shit after so long away, but it felt so damn good to feel that burn again. The guy at the front desk, Javier, was shocked to see me. Holy shoot, bro! Thought you died or something. Just been busy, I replied. Not anymore, though. After the gym, I hit this diner I used to love before Vanessa declared it too greasy and made us stop going. Ordered the biggest breakfast on the menu and devoured every fucking bite. When I got home, she was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone while stirring her coffee. Where were you? She asked without looking up. Out, I replied, grabbing a protein shake from the fridge. That got her attention. I never gave one-word answers. I was always the one rambling on, trying to maintain some connection between us. Out where? I shrugged. Just out. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't push it. I could see her trying to figure out what was different. You reek of sweat, she said, wrinkling her nose. Are you going to shower? Yep, I replied, heading upstairs without another word. That was the beginning. Small steps at first, but significant ones. I made 2 calls that day that changed everything. First was to my old boss, Marcus. He'd moved to a competitor firm a couple years back and had tried to recruit me. I'd turned him down because Vanessa hadn't wanted to deal with the uncertainty of me switching companies. That offer still on the table? I asked when he picked up. Turned out it was, with a significant bump in salary and more flexible working arrangements. We agreed to meet the following week to hash out details. The second call was to Damon, my college buddy who'd been my best man. We hadn't talked in over a year. Dude, he exclaimed, I thought you were dead or something. Sorry, man. Life got complicated. Let me guess, he said. The wife didn't want you hanging with the bad influence anymore. Something like that, I admitted. But I'm making some changes. We made plans for Friday night. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't check with the wife. I just made plans. That week, I kept hitting the gym every morning. Started eating better too. Not the rabbit food Vanessa preferred, but actual protein-heavy meals. I also signed up for a weekend MMA basics class, something I'd been interested in forever, but had never pursued because Vanessa thought it was brutish. At work, I started setting boundaries too. No more staying late to finish other people's crap. I focused on what I was good at, closing deals, managing my team, getting results. My regional director noticed the change immediately. "Whatever's gotten into you lately, keep it up," he said after I landed a big account. "You're on fire." At home, the dynamic was shifting too. Vanessa started watching me more closely, asking more questions, even trying to initiate sex on Wednesday night, which had become rare over the past couple years. I declined. "Not in the mood," I said, turning over and pretending to fall asleep while she lay there, shocked. I'd never turned her down before. Ever. No matter how tired or stressed I was, I'd always been available whenever she deigned to show interest. The confusion on her face was almost worth everything. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice for the first time in ages. "Just tired," I replied, the same excuse she'd given me countless times. She retreated to her side of the bed, and I could feel her staring at the back of my head. Good. Let her wonder for a change. By Friday, she was getting frustrated. The changes in my behavior were adding up, and she knew something was up. "So what are your plans for the weekend?" she asked over breakfast, trying to sound casual. "Meeting Damon for drinks tonight," I said, not looking up from my phone. "Might check out that new MMA gym tomorrow." She frowned. "I was thinking we could go to that new restaurant tonight, the one Heather and Brad were raving about." Classic Vanessa move. She could sense me pulling away, so she was trying to reel me back in. "Already made plans with Damon," I said simply. "Maybe next week." The flash of irritation that crossed her face was subtle, but I caught it. She wasn't used to me saying no. That night with Damon was literally liberating. We had dinner, laughed, and caught up on life. For once, I didn't check my phone all night. I was just being me, the real me, not the watered-down version I'd become over the years. When I got home after midnight, Vanessa was waiting up, pissed about my disappearance. I didn't tell her anything and went straight to bed. Why would I give her justifications of me being late? The awakening had begun, and there was no going back. The weekend after that first night out with Damon was a game changer. I established a routine, hit the gym, then headed to this MMA place that had opened up about a year ago. The class kicked my ass, but by the end, I'd never felt more alive. I signed up for 3 sessions a week on the spot. When I got home, Vanessa was in the kitchen and did a double take at my sweaty, beat-up appearance. "What happened to you?" she asked, eyes wide. "MMA class," I said, grabbing a Gatorade from the fridge. "MMA? Like fighting?" She frowned. "Isn't that dangerous?" I shrugged. "Life's dangerous." She shook her head. "I don't understand why you're suddenly into all these aggressive activities. The gym every day, now fighting? What's next? Rock climbing without a harness?" Classic Vanessa, taking something I enjoyed and making it sound ridiculous to discourage me. That afternoon, I dug my old hunting gear out of the garage, cleaned my rifles, and started researching the upcoming deer season. I used to go every year with my dad and brother before meeting Vanessa. It had been our thing. But after a couple years of her making a fuss about me disappearing into the woods to kill innocent animals, I'd just stopped going. I texted my brother about planning a trip for opening weekend. He responded immediately. "Hell yes, Dad will shit himself with excitement. We thought you'd retired from hunting." Over the next few weeks, I continued my quiet revolution. Gym every morning, MMA 3 times a week, meeting up with old friends I'd lost touch with. I even joined that poker night some guys from work hosted monthly, the one Vanessa had always said was a waste of money. The changes weren't just in my activities, though. I started standing up for myself in bigger ways, too. Like when Vanessa tried to plan our vacation without consulting me. "I've been looking at beach rentals in the Hamptons," she announced one evening. "Can't do July," I said, not looking up from my book. "Going hunting with my brother and dad in Montana that month?" She stared at me like I'd started speaking Klingon. "But we always go to the beach in July." Correction, you always go to the beach in July. I always get dragged along. If you want to go to the Hamptons, go ahead. I'll be in Montana. She stormed off, slamming our bedroom door. I just went back to my book. The old me would have followed her, apologized, tried to smooth things over. But that guy was gone. As the weeks passed, I kept reclaiming more pieces of myself. I signed up for a weekend hockey league, something I'd loved but had given up because Vanessa complained it took too much time. I made decisions without consulting her first. Small stuff at first, then bigger things. Bought a new grill without asking her opinion. Booked a fishing trip. Got tickets to a concert she'd hate. And with each act of independence, I felt more like myself again. The real me, not the watered-down version I'd become to keep the peace. After a month of gym sessions and better eating, I dropped about 15 pounds of fat and started putting on muscle, got a better haircut, started dressing better. And people noticed. Everyone except Vanessa, who was clearly unhappy with the new me. "You're spending a lot of money lately," she said one evening, scrolling through our joint account. "Don't you think you should discuss big purchases with me first?" I looked at her. "Did you discuss that $1,200 handbag you bought last month with me first?" She flushed. "That's different. I've always handled the finances." "Well, that's changing," I said calmly. "I've set up my own checking account. My next paycheck will be going there." Her eyes widened. "What? Why would you do that?" "Because I want to manage my own money." "Are you planning to leave me?" The question caught me off guard. Was I? I hadn't thought that far ahead. "I'm planning to be myself," I said finally. Where that leads, nobody knows. One night, after MMA training, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, arms crossed. "Are you having an affair?" she demanded. I actually laughed. "Number, I'm not." "Then what the hell is going on with you? You're never home anymore. You barely talk to me. You don't touch me." I looked at her. "Why do you care?" "What do you mean? You're my husband. Am I? Because for years, it seems like I'm just the guy who pays the bills and exists in the background of your life." For once, she had no comeback. I walked past her toward the shower, telling her I had a late meeting tomorrow. There was no meeting, of course. She didn't need to know I'd been talking to a lawyer. She didn't need to know anything about my life anymore. 2 weeks into my new life, and Vanessa was starting to panic. I could sense it. She was used to controlling everything, to knowing exactly what I was thinking and doing. Now she had no idea, and it was driving her crazy. She started trying harder, making my favorite meals, wearing the lingerie that had been buried in her drawer for years, asking about my day and actually seeming to listen. Hell, she even suggested we go to this steakhouse I'd mentioned, wanting to try months ago, the one she'd shot down because it was too unhealthy. Too little, too late. I kept moving forward, adding more pieces to my reclaimed life. I accepted that job offer from Marcus, but when I told Vanessa, she went through all 5 stages of grief in about 30 seconds. "You can't just switch companies without discussing it with me first. This is completely irresponsible. What if it doesn't work out? Maybe we can compromise. What if you asked your current company to match their offer? I just don't understand why you'd risk everything we've built." "Fine. Do whatever you want. You will anyway." I just nodded and went back to packing up my home office. The old me would have spent hours reassuring her, explaining my decision, maybe even reconsidering it. But that guy was gone. What really got to her, though, was when I started making social plans without her. In the past, our social life had always been centered around her friends, her colleagues, her preferences. I'd tag along like some emotional support animal, making small talk with husbands and boyfriends I had nothing in common with while she dominated the conversation. Now, I was building my own social circle again, having dinners with my MMA buddies, meeting up with old friends from college, going to sports bars to watch games instead of those pretentious wine bars she loved. And I stopped inviting her along. Not out of spite, but because I knew she'd hate it. She'd spend the whole time checking her phone, making faces at inside jokes she didn't get, asking every 20 minutes when we were leaving. She noticed, of course. "You never want me to come with you anymore," she said one night as I was heading out to meet Damon and some other guys to watch the game. I paused at the door, turning to look at her. "Would you actually enjoy sitting around watching hockey for 3 hours?" I asked. She wrinkled her nose. "Well, no, but then why would I invite you?" The bluntness caught her off guard. In the past, I would have lied, said something like, "Of course I want you there," even though we both knew it wasn't true. "I just feel like we're living separate lives lately," she said, her voice taking on that wounded tone that used to immediately trigger my guilt response. "We are," I agreed, grabbing my keys. "But isn't that what you always wanted? You do your thing, I do mine. We meet in the middle sometimes?" She frowned. "That's not what I wanted. I wanted us to do things together." "You wanted us to do things you wanted together," I corrected her. "There's a difference." I left before she could respond, and spent the night actually enjoying myself with guys who got me, laughing and bullshitting without having to worry about whether my wife was having a good time or judging my behavior. The real shift in power became obvious at her company's annual dinner. In previous years, I'd been the quiet husband in the background, nodding along while Vanessa dazzled her colleagues. I'd wear the outfit she picked out for me, stick to the topics she deemed appropriate, laugh at the right moments in her stories. This time, I dressed myself. Nothing crazy, just a well-fitted suit that actually looked good on me instead of the boxy, conservative shit she usually made me wear. I showed up directly from work instead of going home first for her inspection. And most importantly, I didn't play the role of the adoring, silent husband. I could see Vanessa watching me from across the room, a strange expression on her face. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something closer to confusion, like she was seeing a stranger wearing her husband's face. Later that night, as we were driving home, she said, "You were different tonight." Was I? Yes. More, I don't know, present, engaged. People kept commenting on it. I shrugged. Just being myself. It's like I don't even know who you are anymore, she said quietly. I glanced at her. Maybe you never did. The next major test came when her family invited us for dinner again, back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, the place where I'd overheard her and her mother mocking me. I almost declined, but then I thought, screw it. Let's see how this plays out. Walking into that house was surreal. Last time, I'd been this insecure, people-pleasing version of myself, desperate for their approval, willing to swallow any amount of disrespect to keep the peace. This time, I strode in with confidence, greeted everyone warmly but on my terms. Didn't defer to Eleanor's snide comments or seek Frank's approval. Just existed in the space as my own person. I could tell it threw them off. They were used to the old me, the one who let Vanessa speak for him, who laughed too hard at their jokes, who never challenged their thinly veiled insults disguised as teasing. The real change came during dinner. Vanessa's brother asked about my new job, and I was in the middle of explaining the innovative approach the company was taking when Vanessa cut in. "Oh, he's still figuring it all out," she said with a dismissive wave. "It's a big change from his last position. In the past, I would have shut up and let her control the narrative. This time? Actually," I said calmly, looking directly at her, "I'm not figuring it out. I'm exceeding their expectations and have already brought in 2 major accounts. But thanks for the vote of confidence, honey." The table went silent. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Eleanor looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Frank, interestingly, had the hint of a smile on his face. "Well," Eleanor finally said, "it sounds like you're adjusting well." "I am," I agreed. "Change can be good." The rest of the dinner was fascinatingly uncomfortable. Vanessa kept trying to steer conversations, control topics, maintain her role as the center of attention. I just did my own thing, talked to people directly, answered questions honestly, existed as a full human being instead of her accessory. On the drive home, the silence was heavy. I could feel her trying to figure out how to approach what had happened. "You embarrassed me tonight," she finally said. "How? By speaking for myself? You contradicted me in front of my whole family." "No, I corrected you when you tried to diminish my accomplishments." She crossed her arms. "You're deliberately trying to make me look bad." I almost laughed. "Vanessa, I've spent years trying to make you look good. Years letting you speak for me, control narratives, present our life exactly how you wanted it to be seen. I'm done with that. So what? Now you're just going to undermine me at every turn?" "No, I'm just going to be myself. If that feels like undermining to you, that says more about your view of our relationship than it does about my behavior." She didn't have a response to that. We drove the rest of the way in silence. But that night was a turning point. She realized she could no longer count on me to play my assigned role in her carefully crafted life, and it terrified her. Over the next few days, she shifted strategies. She started walking around in those silk pajamas I used to love, accidentally coming out of the shower when I was in the bedroom, touching my arm or back when she passed by. Honestly, it was kind of pathetic. Not because the attempts weren't objectively sexy, she was still a beautiful woman, but because it was so transparent. She wasn't doing it out of genuine desire or affection. She was doing it to regain control. I didn't bite, didn't reject her outright, but didn't respond with the enthusiasm she expected either. Just treated her touches as casual contact, nothing more. After a week of getting nowhere, she switched tactics. "I feel like I'm losing you," she said one night, eyes on me while pretending to watch TV. I replied, not looking up from my book. "Don't you care?" I met her gaze. "I've spent years caring about your feelings at the cost of my own. Right now, I'm focused on me." "And what about us?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. "What do you think we need?" Her surprise was obvious. "Maybe counseling? A weekend away? Or just making time to reconnect?" The suggestions were things I might have wanted months ago. But now, I wasn't even sure I wanted this marriage anymore. "I'll think about it," I said. She nodded, clearly hoping for more but too cautious to push. That alone was a change. But I never gave her an answer about counseling or reconnecting. I spent the next week thinking about what I actually wanted. Did this marriage have anything worth saving? Or was I just hanging on out of habit and the fear of starting over? My answer came when I overheard her on the phone with her mother. I wasn't eavesdropping. I'd just gotten home early from the gym and she was in the kitchen, not expecting me. "I think he's coming around, Mom. I suggested counseling and he said he'd think about it. Just need to be patient and he'll get over this phase. Her mother's reply was loud enough that I caught it. Men are simple. He'll be back to normal soon. That was it. The final confirmation that nothing had changed. She still saw my self-respect as a phase. She wasn't interested in a real partnership. She just wanted her obedient husband back. I secured an apartment that weekend, consulted a lawyer, and moved some money to a separate account. Not everything. I wasn't trying to screw her financially, just enough to get by. When I told her I was moving out, she cycled through the expected responses: disbelief, anger, tears, bargaining. I finally told her I'd heard her talking to her mom about my phase. "You weren't supposed to hear that," was all she said. Not denial, not an apology, just regret at being caught. "That's the problem," I replied. "You're only sorry I heard it, not sorry you said it." I moved out that weekend, packed the essentials, and arranged to visit Diesel regularly since my new apartment didn't allow pets. Hardest part was leaving that dog. He looked confused as hell watching me load boxes into my truck. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed as I left, looking shocked that I actually went through with it. The house in my rear view never felt like mine anyway. My apartment wasn't fancy. Basic one bedroom in a decent area. No decorative pillows, no scented candles, just a place where I could breathe. Vanessa tried every trick to get me back. Tears, anger, mutual friends as messengers. Her dad reached out too. That was the only conversation worth having. Frank actually respected my decision and said I looked better than he'd seen me in years. The divorce process was predictable. She fought it, dragged it out, then finally accepted reality when I wouldn't budge. We split things fairly. She kept the house, I kept my retirement accounts. We worked out visits for Diesel. Now I'm legally single and legitimately happy. I'm still improving myself, and I started dating women who actually respected me. The biggest change was internal, though. I'd rediscovered my self-respect and wasn't compromising it for anyone. A few months post-divorce, I ran into Vanessa at a restaurant. I was with a chick named Jess, a physical therapist I'd been seeing. Vanessa was alone. Our exchange was brief and meaningless, but as she walked away, I realized something profound. I felt absolutely nothing for her. No hate, just mild curiosity about this woman who once controlled my entire life. She had become completely irrelevant to me, just as I had been to her for so long. Self-respect isn't something you get from others. It's something you claim for yourself, and once you have it, no one can take it away again. As I looked at the beautiful woman across from me who saw me as an equal, not a project, I knew my life wasn't perfect, but it was completely mine again, and that was everything. Thank you guys for sticking until the end.